Motivation is an interesting thing because I feel like it cannot be forced. I feel like it kind of just comes about here and there. And that's why things like discipline are so important, because they, in theory, allow you to prevail even through the droughts, the dry periods, when motivation is nowhere to be found. But I'll tell you what, it is tough to self-motivate on some days. And I try and use certain things as rocket fuel for my motivation, such as the prospect of having to go back to the 9-to-5 grind, which in the beginning was my real rocket fuel, which propelled me into finally working for myself with some level of success, able to sustain myself through my own means. But that is an inconsistent journey, and unlike a salaried position, there are high points and low points as far as income. And when you're in a dry season, and when you need to start pivoting, it's hardest to self-motivate. It's kind of why detachment is such an important principle, because it allows you to not get too obsessed with the wins so that you can weather the losses, because the losses follow the wins and the wins follow the losses. It's an ebb and a flow like anything else in life. And you cannot solely sustain yourself off of the wins in life because it's not a reliable source of energy. You need to find something deeper and more stable. You need to find comfort in the journey itself, the process, the enjoyment in that process, with no regard for what's going to come of it. Be grateful and thankful when it does bear fruit and benefit you in whatever way you want it to, financially or otherwise. But never expect it, and never especially expect to use it as a motivation, because it's inconsistent. It's almost random. I mean, you can do things in business to bend in that direction, sure, to up your chances of success. But in the end, it's always random. You can't force people to buy your product. You can't will it into existence to any meaningful degree. You can practice things like the law of attraction. And the thing about that, though, is you can't really control the timing of it. And so while you can do things in your life that will manifest an eventual outcome and work in your favor, you cannot control when that's going to occur. And so you need to get comfortable. You need to learn to be at peace with the uncertainty. But I started this video wanting to talk about how the threat of having to return to a 9-to-5 life was at first my fuel source to self-motivate, but now it's not as motivating. Some days you just don't feel like doing anything, you know? And they say you gotta just push through those days and do your thing anyway. It almost feels like, as far as Instagram is concerned, that you are put through artificial seasons of abundance. And what I mean by that is that the algorithm occasionally picks up on your work and puts it out there to the masses, and then it kind of retracts and gives you a cool down period, and then gives that same attention to another account who they might also want to uplift. I really do get that sense that no matter how good your work is doing and no matter how on fire your account is, it's by design temporary. And I think it's all the algorithm's doing. I can't say for sure. I don't have any insight into the inner workings of Instagram or Meta or how they've programmed any of this. But it really, in my experience, it has felt like the rate at which I go viral is artificially controlled, because it really does seem to come in waves, measurable waves, almost like clockwork. Like a few weeks later, something starts going viral, and then other things start going viral too. And it's a nice couple of weeks there. And then what follows is another dry period. But I'm putting out the same level of work consistently. I am very consistent with the type of work I put out, the genre, the shock appeal. And I should be honest, I'm often pretty surprised which reels end up going viral. Here I am going from a talk of motivation into a discussion on virality again, and Instagram and the algorithm. But I think where it ties back together is that you can't use virality as a fuel source for motivation, because it's wildly inconsistent. And it's a great dopamine hit, but that's all that it really is in the end. And if you're lucky enough, it will start to pay out. But it is not a regular paycheck, folks, and just know that going into it. I think, if anything, Instagram's greatest strength is its networking potential. My career opportunities as a result of my Instagram have blown up. It's radically transformed my reputation, my career, and I find the majority of my clientele through Instagram. And so approach it in that way. Definitely try and get as big as you possibly can, but just don't think of it first and foremost as a revenue tool. You can use it as a secondary revenue tool. You can promote products and promotions and this and that. Don't expect it to make you wildly rich as a platform. That's not its primary function. I think if you really just want to make money off of a platform strictly, YouTube is most likely your best bet as far as consistent payouts and things like that. Now, you're going to have to really grind and build that YouTube, and it's not going to be overnight, but that's the case with any of these platforms. I think we each have our own triggers for what motivates us, and I think deep down we know what those triggers are. My biggest motivating trigger, at least as of late, is finding new ways to make interesting and innovative art. And if you're involved in the AI space, it seems like every single week a new tool is coming out that makes it just that much easier to bring your imagination into reality with just a few steps less. The rate of advancement right now is out of control, you guys. I don't want this video to be something that necessarily motivates you, as funny as that sounds. I want it to be a video that reminds you that you can be at peace with not feeling motivated, and that it's okay to have some days where there's just no motivation to be found. Because you have to remember, we're like the only animal that we know of that works for a living and that is constantly trying to self-improve and to build and construct. What other animal does that? Maybe a beaver with the dam. But largely, we are the only creature that is so deeply involved in the material and bettering ourselves every single day. And you just have to remember that it's not natural. Like, it's not the norm. And so give yourself permission to be an animal some days and to just lounge around and just eat and not even worry about it, not even stress about the fact that you're just lounging around that day. I don't like the hamster wheel, the daily grind. The thing is, though, I carry myself in a way that defies what I'm saying right now. In other words, I don't practice what I preach. I do work too hard. I do grind every single day, and I have seen results in my life because of it, which are great, but I have also sacrificed a lot, including some of my sanity, and I miss that sanity, and I mourn for the loss of that sanity. And hopefully over time, as I learn to take more rest days and mental health days, I can recover some of that sanity that I gave up in the pursuit of success and achievement. I think you really also need to have a why, and people in business say this all the time. You need to have a why. Why are you doing any of this? And you need to use that as your guiding star and return to it constantly as a reminder, especially on the less motivating days, as far as why you're doing what you're doing. What is my why, you might ask? I have an insatiable need to share my artwork with the world, that's why. And I always have, and it's always eaten away at me that I needed to share this gift with the world. In some sense, my why is not even a voluntary thing. And you'll know this about creatives once you get to know them, is that they don't view art as a luxury or something that they can just do once in a while. If they're like a real artist, I believe they have to create in order to feel alive. They have to make stuff. They have to meddle and tinker. And that is their why. And I don't think we choose our whys in life either. I really don't. I think our deepest, most inner motivations come from somewhere else, and we don't really select them. And you have to honor them. You really do. You have to honor your unchosen motivations, that which fuels you for better or for worse. In some sense, the why that I'm speaking of is the same as motivation, isn't it? Because if you don't have a reason to do what you're doing, you're not gonna do it. And I think that's a fair statement. I'm not surprised at all that most people work for a company instead of themselves, because I get how much life grinds you down and whittles away at what once was. I totally get it. I'm sure there's so many countless numbers of employees who would rather be working for themselves, but just don't have it in them. The drive, the motivation. That's a real problem. It's a messy problem, one without a real clear solution. But I'll tell you, when you're put in a situation where you have no choice but to work for yourself, it's times like that when you really find out what you're truly made of. Because we are comfort-seeking creatures. And if we're in a situation that is objectively awful yet comfortable, we're going to most likely stay in it because it's comfortable. Which sounds oxymoronic because you wouldn't think comfort and awfulness would go together. But there is a comfort to be found in the familiar. And when a bad situation is familiar, it is on some level comfortable. And we don't want to threaten that. We don't want to threaten comfort as animals. But what you don't realize is that there is such a more comfortable life waiting for you on the other side of the unknown. A level of comfort that you didn't even know existed awaits you, and it awaits me too. There's been a lot of rambling in this video, as there often is, but especially here. And I hope throughout all of it you have gathered something useful. I hope you guys think I have something valuable to share through these videos, because I like to talk and I've always wanted to share my ideas. But now with my Instagram taking off and all, that's really upped my motivation to share more of who I am with the world, because I really showed a vulnerable side of myself on Instagram by putting out the artwork that I have. And it is not for everyone, I'll tell you that. The type of work I make, no doubt it's limited my, let's just say, hiring potential. If I were to go out and apply to some jobs at this point, people would take a quick look at my page and be like, ugh, who's this guy? But he does have 1.6 million followers, so maybe there's something to it. So it's an interesting situation, right? I make really unpalatable, creepy, abstract body horror, but on the other hand, it resonates with billions of people. So, but you know what? I'm not trying to make myself a hireable, desirable candidate. I'm not trying to work for nobody. That's the thing about it. And I've taken a huge risk making my Instagram into exactly what I want it to be, with my innermost monsters and demons. Took a huge gamble. Currently am still taking a huge gamble. And I want to keep doing that. There's nothing that feels better as an artist than wearing your heart on your sleeve fully and putting out the most authentic pieces that you can. And so that rewarding feeling, that is motivating. I am motivated by how good it feels, not just to go viral, but to be able to share my most authentic and true self. And that is something that is consistent, unlike going viral. And so there's my why. Getting to express myself fully and authentically. And Instagram does a great job at letting me do that for the most part. They have flagged a few of my reels here and there for being perhaps a little too R-rated, I suppose, for their platform, because I do like scary stuff in the horror genre, especially around Halloween time. But for the most part, they treat me with kindness and fairness, and there's really no platform like it out there. So I'm grateful for what Instagram has done for my life, and I'm going to keep doing it. And so all of this is to say, in a very roundabout kind of way, find your why. Don't force motivation because it doesn't work anyway. And find peace in the days when it's nowhere to be found. This is the long game after all. There's no need to rush. Unless you're about to lose your house, then rush. But I think you'll quickly find rushing anything doesn't work. And so there it is. Have a great day, folks. Peace.